Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Roofr Report, brought to you by Roofr.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Roofr Report. I'm Pete McKendrick here with Roofr, and back again today to talk about a great topic here about running your business. You know, like I said in some of our prior podcasts, you know, we've transitioned a little bit to really try to help the roofers out with running their business and the tools that they need to be successful in that. You know, tech obviously for us is a big one, but you know, there's so many other things that come before you employ the tech to really, you know, laying the foundation of being successful as a business owner. And today I'm very excited to have my guest, Dave Sullivan. And Dave, I'm going to let you do a little quick introduction and just explain to everybody who you are if they aren't familiar with you. You are the host of the Roofr Show, correct? Mm-hmm. And just want to let you give your some background and how you got to where you are today in the industry and what you are offering contractors today.
Well, great. Well, thanks, Pete, for having me on. Appreciate it. And I was a roofing contractor out here in California for 30 years. And I retired and started this podcast, but I'll get into that in a second. But I grew up in a small roofing business. And my father just had a few guys, and he was doing everything. He was chained to the business, ran a pretty successful business, but he was never able to get outside of the business and do the things that he wanted to do. And by the time I got out of college, came in, have him teach me the ropes, he ended up having a heart attack and wasn't able to do the things that he wanted to do. I got in there. I had no idea what I was doing, totally screwed things up even further. So it was a lot of hard knocks. So I learned my way. And transitioned into a pretty good sized business here in Northern California, which I had exited. And after a while, after selling my business, I wanted to reconnect with some of my friends in the industry. So I started this podcast. This is early on where podcasting was just starting. I think I'm on number 270 now. So this is going back a number of years. And I just thought I'd do it, try it, give it a try for a while. Podcasting was just starting to get big. And I did that, really enjoyed it, and been doing it ever since. So I got into that, started bringing on some of my friends as guests. We got into all various aspects of running a business. And that later led into business coaching, which I'm doing now. And I do one-on-one business coaching for specifically contractors in the $500,000 to about $6 million range in annual sales. So I focus on the smaller contractor because those are the guys that really need the help. Plus, if you get much bigger than that, you need somebody that's going to come out and be more hands-on, interview the team and so forth, which is where we were. So this is an opportunity for smaller contractors to get business coaching advice. It's just over Zoom. That's what I do. And I've been doing it for quite a while now. We're building out peer groups, mastermind groups, and those have been really successful, getting non-competing contractors together from around the country, similar size, coming up with best practices, what's working, what's not. And that's where I am. So it's a part-time deal, and I travel and kind of do retired stuff.
Nice. And I think that it's funny that you mentioned that. I was talking to a contractor the other day, but one of the points you brought up about being married to the business and more or less chained to the business, he was saying that up really until about the $5 million mark in his business, he was just like he said, I was ready to cut my own throat. He's like, I'm running crazy. And, every day is just another day of putting out fires and just complete nonsense. And he's like, I was done. Like, he was like, I was burned out, ready to go. And, he said I was able to kind of reel it in a little bit. And then as the business grew a little, he said I was able to back a little bit away from the business. And now he's, at $20+ million a year. And he said, like, now I'm on cruise control. He's like, I'm actually to the point that as the owner of the business, I'm bored. It's a boring business to run because it's running itself. It's gotten to that point, But he said it also gives him the opportunity to really take a high level look and be able to tweak the process and oversee things a little better than he used to because he was so chained to the daily operation that he was so hyper focused on it that he struggled to see the big picture. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that, I think that's a challenge for anybody that starts any business when you first start out, because it is your baby and you're in it so hard that you're in the everyday operation, and it's tough to take that step back and take a look at it and maybe figure out a better process
Mm-hmm.
to find that balance. Like you said, with your dad, he's struggled to find it all the way up, and after years even of operating. So
Yeah. And I saw that and I said, I don't want to do this. This is not how I want to run this business. This is not how I want to run my life. And I wanted to do it differently because I had three little kids, three young boys. I wanted to travel, the things that he was never able to do. So I could kind of see this, runway. It's not that long. So there's things that I wanted to do. So I had to build out this business to accomplish those things. And so the thing that changed my business and my life was bringing in a consultant or a coach in to help me. And that was at the point where, as you say, you're putting out fires all day, you're wearing all the hats, you're not making that much money, and you're spending time away from home. And it's just a stressor. So I wanted to do it differently. And that's what we did. And I mean, travel is kind of my thing. I've always been a skier, so skiing all over the world. And that was what I wanted to do. And that's what my business did for me. It gave me that opportunity to do things because I built it out a certain way. I mean, we start off, we've got a blank canvas. We can draw whatever we want and build this business into something that's going to help us accomplish our goals. And that's what I do is come up with business planning. And I think that's what we want to talk about today at some point.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that from the start here, you're talking about something that's so important. And I think that's understanding the goal, right? Understanding the why. Like, what are we trying to accomplish by starting a
Yep.
business, right? Because I think, a lot of times you guys get into this and they think like, oh, I just want to run a successful business. I just want to make money. Well, why? Like, ultimately, why, right? Like, why do you like? For you, it was
Exactly.
I want to travel. Like, I want to go skiing, right? Like, I want this business to get to the point where I can afford to do that, where I have the flexibility to do that. And I couldn't working for someone else, probably, maybe not, depending on who you're working for, So, that was ultimately your goal and your why of why you were starting the business. And I think that's a big part of it, and I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of business owners, even that have been in business for years and deem themselves as successful, sometimes have to take a step back and ask themselves that question, like, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is ultimately the end goal of this?
Exactly. And you're so right about the why. Why do you want to do this? And you have to answer that question. Yeah, and as you say, most contractors, they either come up through the trades or they come up through sales, and a lot of it is, hey, here's my boss, he's making all this money, this guy's never working, it's so easy. And then once you get through the friends and family stuff that you have lined up when you go off on your own and realize, hey, this is not easy, it's really
Yeah.
tough. And one of the things that I do, because I have a lot of contractors that come ask me for help, and when you really get down to that why are you doing this? And there's a lot of contractors that should not be in the business. They should be working for somebody else. They should not be running their own business. And you can see this a pattern where it's really unlikely that these guys are going to make it because over 80% of contractors go out of business within the first 5 years. So the odds are stacked against you. And just getting out there and trying this on your own is not a good idea. And that's why, learn from others, learn from other people's mistakes, not your own. And there's so much information out there. Like here we are both doing podcasts. You just got to go out there and get the education, and it's all available. A lot of it's free, but why reinvent the wheel, man?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a reason that the successful contractors are successful. And a lot of them, it's because, like you said, you came in and didn't really know anything when you came into your parents' business. It's like they've made the mistakes, right? Like, don't think that they got to be successful by just doing it right. Like they've made a ton of
Hmm.
mistakes to get there, and they figured it out, right? So those guys are a great tool. Someone like yourself who was successful and figured it out. Those type of people are great. Like I always say, our staff internally at Roofr is a great asset. Like we have tons of people, so on the sales side and the success side, that do nothing all day but talk to contractors and
Right.
have insight into multiple contractors' business. I may talk to 6, 8, 10 contractors a day and get a little glimpse of how they're doing things. So by default, I become this great tool that is very underutilized, right? Because I
Hmm.
get insight. Why is this guy, how is he quoting and running a $20 million company, and this guy quoting and he can only make $1 million a year, right? What's the difference? And we get that insight, we get to see it. And I think that, so many times contractors don't take advantage of it as much as they could. I mean, it's free information. Like you said, there's so much of it out there. Like our guys are just willing to have a conversation with anybody, just take advantage of us,
Right.
so, but I want to get into our topic today, which is having a business plan. And this is really key for the guys that are starting out, but also I think guys that are in it. I think a lot of times, you think to yourself, well, a business plan is something I've got to put in place before I start a business, right? When I'm, like I know, yeah, I went to school for business. That was my degree. And that's the first thing they teach you. Like
Right.
step one, create a business plan, right? You
Right.
have an idea, get it down on paper, right? And I think that it's a process. And I think that a lot of people skip it because it is a process, right? Or overlook it on purpose, and just dive right in and, speak, I guess, to the importance of it, and then what you've seen. Like you said, you guys brought in a coach that really changed the direction of your business. Speak to how important a business plan is to the success, ultimately, to the foundation of a business.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting some of the things you said, the business degree, because I have a business degree also, and it didn't do anything for me when I started this
Exactly.
business.
It teaches you nothing.
And I was just so overwhelmed. And when you're starting, you have no idea about all of the things that are coming from you, whether it's, customer complaints, trying to get leads, trying to get paid, trying to, make payroll, all
Yeah.
of these things. You don't learn that in school.
No.
So what, the why a plan is so important. And I really, I mean, I certainly learned how to do all of this and so forth. And a lot of it is how to, when you need a plan to get financing and so forth, for instance. But really, um, we didn't have a plan to get this business going, and that's why we kind of struggled. So by having somebody coming in and basically taking me back, see the forest through the trees, looking at the big picture, that's when we started the plan. But hey, face it, contractors, so many people have big egos. I'm going to do it on my own. So I'm never going to ask for directions. And it's tough because and that's where I talk about some contractors are just not coachable. If you're coachable, you're looking for better ways to do it. You're leaning on others that have been there before and can offer advice. And so this is what really got us started. And by building out this plan, so many contractors, though, they don't they don't understand the value. They don't see the benefit. They don't really know how to do it or how to get started. So what I did, I saw this and I came up with basically it's called a one-page business plan. It's a free download on my website at theroofershow.com. You can download this, and it's a template. It's an 8-step process that takes you through the business planning um, uh, session to get you where you print this off. You got a basic, simple, easy plan. And the real benefit of designing a business plan, it's the process of planning, which is going through the process, asking those questions and really thinking about it. We talked about the why. Well, that's the first step of the plan. We always start at the end. What's your destination? What are you trying to do with this business? What do you want your business to do for you? And this was the question that I had to answer. And that for me was, I wanted a business that didn't rely on me to be there all the time as required with my father. And I wanted to do that differently. So I had to come up with a business plan of how we were going to do this. How do we remove me from the business? And really, this is how we start. You start from day one, building a business to sell. And the reason that you do that is because this is how we build this out. A business that relies on you has no value, because if you're going to sell this business at some point, where's the value? What's somebody going to buy? Well, if you're gone, for the most part, that business is worth nothing, because it relies on you to do everything. And 95% of the contractors get to the end of their journey and realize their business is not worth anything, and they end up just closing the doors and walking away. And that's a real shame. So what we do from day one is start building this business for value. And so we have a valuable business that we can not only provide us a great lifestyle for us and our family, but going along the way, but also building a valuable asset that you can use to sell in retirement. So that's really what business plan, having a plan can do for you. And, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. It doesn't matter. you know, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. And that's where most guys are just going. They're just moving forward, got their head down, not really sure where they're going. And that's why so many contractors get stuck. They're just stuck in that rut, whether it's sales. Very few businesses get to be over $1 million. Very few, if you look at national averages.
Yeah. I mean, I love the point of you saying that, you have to, it makes you think, right? You have to ask yourself these questions when you
Hmm.
get into the business plan, because I remember that being a part of it. I started a business when I was younger, and, in my training in college, I was at least smart enough to say, okay, let me sit down and kind of go through a basic business plan. And I remember, the one that always sticks out for me is you do a SWOT, right? You do
Yeah.
your strengths, your
Oh
weaknesses,
yeah.
your opportunity, your threats, right? And but it makes you think, right? Like, who's my
That's right.
competition? Like, what do I have to offer? Where are the holes in my business already? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, what are going to be possible holes in my business, like, when as we get this thing rolling? And so it makes you really sit back and take in the big picture that you probably wouldn't. And if you just dove into it, you get so hyper focused on the actual operation that you miss all these other things that are going to eventually be, make their way to the top and become an issue for you, that you could have maybe headed them off had you given them any thought, early on. So
Yeah.
I love that
Well,
point.
yeah. Well, let's take a look at what's going on these days. I mean, if you're watching the news, hey, things are changing. We've been on this party for 10 plus years now, and it's interesting to look at so many business owners that, if you've been in business only 10 years, you've never seen a recession, you've never seen difficult times, and all you've seen is up, 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 up. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to make money in this market. Okay, as a roofing contractor, you're the contractors are limited. You're seeing this now where everything's booming. You should be making a lot of money coming out of here right now, because when this turns, and it's going to, and we're seeing that field, interest rates are going up, inflation is skyrocketing, and what's going to happen is homeowners are going to start feeling less wealthy. Okay, and this
Right.
that wealth effect of the last 10 years, where your home is doubling in value and so forth, it makes people feel more wealthy. They're more willing to spend money. They're more willing to invest money into their homes, new roofs, remodeling and whatever. And we saw that during COVID. But what happens coming into this new market. I mean, it's going to slow down at some point. It's a
Yeah.
cyclical business, always does, always will. So are you prepared to see a 20-25% drop in business? What are you going to do? And that's where we talk about looking ahead and planning for that, whether it's your SWOT. I mean, we talk about threats in our SWOT. I mean, that's a huge threat, right? Is this
Yeah.
economy is going to change, and there's going to be one hell of a hangover. And if you're not prepared for that, just like the last recession, it just wiped out a lot of contractors. And you don't want to be, one of those statistics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, let's dive into it. I know, like you said, you have kind of
Mm-hmm.
an 8-point business plan that you present to these guys, short and sweet, which I think is great because I remember when I first started looking at doing a business plan and you look at some of these templates for them, you're just like, am I
Yeah,
writing a novel here? Like,
exactly.
this is going to take me a year just to create a business plan, So I
Mm-hmm.
love that you have some really bulleted, straightforward points, and you make it pretty straightforward for these guys to create something that's usable, and beneficial to them without investing a lifetime to figure it out.
Yeah,
So let's
yeah.
dive into a little bit of like how you guys walk through developing this business plan with them.
Okay. And this is really, yeah, this is just an abbreviated version, give you a little taste of what business planning is about, how to build out your business, one page. And this is really the outline that we use, to work with contractors and look at all these things. But let me go through the steps. So there's 8 steps. And as I say, we start at the end. We always start at the end. Where's our destination? Where are we trying to go? And then we can come back, reverse engineer, build a roadmap to get us there. And it would be just like, hey, I'm going to drive across country. What am I going to need? I'm going to need places. We got to have a plan. We got to know where we're going to stop, how much gas, how much whatever. We don't drive across the country with duct tape over our gauges, right? We need to know what's going on as we go. We need to go there in the shortest, quickest route. And that's really where we start. And our destination is different for everybody. And just as our why, we talked about the why being so important. But also it's what does success mean to you? And again, it's different for everybody. I've got contractors that are on the smaller side doing, $1 or $2 million working out of their home. They, through automation, I mean, it's a simple business. They make a ton of money and they're able to spend time with their kids. They got little kids. That's what's important. I've got other guys that, I just want to be the biggest guy in town. I want sales. I want to scale. It's
Mhm.
that buzzword of scaling. I'm going to 10x, 20x, 50x my business. With all of this top line revenue, with no concern about the bottom line. And I always say, I didn't want to be the biggest guy in town. I just wanted to be the most profitable.
Yeah.
And that's what we do in our programs is focus on profitability. Because if we can work less and make more, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because you can make or lose money at any size business. So we have to decide where we are in that. So if we're starting off and let's say we're building up a business, we're just getting started. If we're just getting started, the goal that I usually set out is, hey, it's a 2-year goal. Okay. If you can make it through the first 2 years and still survive, you've really beat the odds. Okay. So that may be our focus. Um, a more mature company, where we want to grow our profitability. We want to start building out this company, which is removing ourselves from the day to day. That may be what's important. Or I work with a lot of, contractors in their 50s, so forth. They've got no exit strategy at all. Have done nothing as far as thinking about how am I going to exit this business? How am I going to be able to sell this, or whether I want to bring my kids in, pass it down to generations. That all takes a lot of planning. I mean, to exit your company, it's going to take you 5 years to build out a saleable business. So you may be at that point. So once we determine that, we can come back to the beginning and start building out our map. So, that's the first step. I call it the end. It's our destination and our roadmap to get us there. The next step is what I call the customer, and that's the what, who, where, and why of the customer. We have to understand that. The first thing we have to understand, what business are we in? So when we're talking about our customer, the what's our business? Because I see, and this is a very common problem I see, where a contractor may be doing roofing, they're doing residential, commercial, they're doing gutters, they're doing siding, they're doing basements, windows. I mean, it's all over the board. Okay, well, this was what happened in my business. We did residential, we did commercial. We would do anything, trying to be everything to everybody. And that does not work. And when my consultant came in, we broke those two out as two separate profit centers or loss centers, as they may be. But we break those out into two separate divisions. And that's what we need to do. We need to look at those and say, where do we make our money? And in our case, we broke that out. We looked at what we were doing, and we were losing money in the residential end of the business. And we just weren't very good at it. And I didn't particularly like it. There were customer problems and so forth. So we're losing money there, and it's dragging down our commercial business, which is our bread and butter. So we phased out the residential, focused on commercial 100%, and business just took off. And that was right for us. I'm not saying commercial is the right way to go. It may be residential, because I've got contractors that, hey, you're just not very good at this commercial work. Everybody wants to start getting into it because the jobs are bigger. Doesn't mean it's more profitable. So that's the first thing. And I see, particularly when we're doing 3 or 4 different services. An example was contractor I worked with last week. He's doing siding also. And I go, well, how's the siding going? He says, well, it's a pain in the ass. So what happens is, I'm having a hard time. I can't get subs for it. We're just not very good at it. I go, how much of your business is this? It's about 10%. Well, how much time are you spending? Well, I seem to be spending about 30% of my time screwing around with this. I go, why are we doing this? Well, I don't want to give it up, type of thing. Some people ask us for it. I go, get rid of it. You're not doing that. The riches are in the niches, and I really believe that, where if you niche down and become an expert at what you do really well and be the best, you just get that process down where you do it each and every day. And that, I think, is where the profitability is. So that's the what of our customer. The who is defining our ideal customer. Who is that? That one customer that we love to work for, that we wish we had 100 just like, whether it's maybe high income guy in a certain neighborhood, certain type of work, the guys that, don't jam us on the prices. They pay their bills. They're a pleasure to work with. Those. And once we identify them, those are the guys that we want to go after. We don't want to, be chasing all these other people that don't fit into that ideal customer, because that's where we're spending time with guys that can't. There's no way these guys can afford our service. Here's somebody that's asked, I've got 5 bids. I want a 6th, and somebody will run out and give it to them. What are you, crazy? That's not it. And when they start talking about being so busy all the time, I'm so busy. No, you're just screwed up, and you're not able to focus on those people that really are your buyers. So we can remove all the riffraff, focus on those. We're going to sell more. We're going to drastically improve our close rates, because we're able to spend the time with real customers that can afford our service, that want to pay for the value that we provide and don't mind paying a higher price.
Man, I love that point, because I think
Yeah.
I think it's something that, especially when you're running a brand new business, is a mistake that we make all the time. Everybody
Hmm.
makes it, right? Because you just want customers. So you'll take anybody,
Right.
right? And you just
Yeah.
agree to anything. And I think that's how you, like you said, you end up getting busy, but busy for the wrong reasons,
And you're not
right?
profitable. You're just chasing your tail,
Yeah.
It's like the truck that you see going down the road, which says, no job too small, no job too big. We'll beat any prices, this whole thing. And it's just like, what? And you could see this from when you look at contractors' websites and you go to their homepage. And if you can't immediately know what they do and what they specialize in, what they're good at, you're looking at this page and they're doing all kinds of stuff. It's just clutter. I want to get a roof on my home. I want somebody that specializes in this. I want it to be clear. And when you come to the homepage, you say, I'm in the right place. And that's how we want to set up our business. Now, the last part of our customer is the where. Where are we going to find them? Where do they hang out? And that's identifying um, perhaps gated communities, wealthier neighborhoods, um, soccer moms, soccer fields, So where do we spend our money? It's not spray and pray with our marketing dollars. We want to laser focus on that ideal customer. Where are they? How do we reach them? Or more importantly, how do they reach us? How do they find us? So it's understanding that customer, and that's our second step. The main, we really gotta focus down on that. The third step is what I call the focus, and this is in business school, you also have a mission statement, right? You got to do this, explain what it is that you do, how you help your customer, and be clear. We did that. We spent a lot of time doing that. Put it on a plaque, throw it up on the wall. Everybody forgets what it is, right?
Yeah.
So the third step is what I call the focus. It's being clear on what it is that we do. And I think the better way to do that rather than a mission statement is through an elevator pitch. A 30, 60-second elevator pitch. And the idea is we know that you get in the bottom floor of an elevator, and here's the biggest property manager in town, and to strike up a conversation, usually, as opposed to having a prepared elevator pitch, and you're able to have this conversation with him by the time he gets up in the top of the elevator. And whether he runs out the door or whether he says, really, that's interesting, tell me more. And what the elevator pit consists of is what the problem is in the industry that we solve. Okay. And in this case, hey, you probably weren't aware that most contractors go out of business within 5 years. Where the number one complaints with the Better Business Bureau is roofing contractors. There's a reason for that. And this is how we solve that problem. We solve it better than anybody else. And we go through this pitch where it's helpful, it's interesting, we're prepared for this, and then we're asking the call to action. What is it that you want them to do? Whether it's, okay, give me your business card and I'll send you, or your email address, and I'll send you this little booklet that we've got on 10 steps how to hire a contractor you can trust. But it's having that pitch, having it ready to go, because you're going to run into people, whether it's cocktail party or um, meetups, whatever it is. So you need to have that prepared and ready to go. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. How often do you recite your mission statement to somebody? So, you
That
know,
that's the thing. I finally gave up.
yeah. No, it
So
makes perfect sense.
yeah, and then we get into our fourth step. The next step is our SWOT, and we discuss that. Our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we look at our strengths. What do we have to work with? And maybe we've got a great workforce, great installers, great production people, or maybe we've got good salespeople. That's one of our strengths. So we play to our strengths. Weaknesses, maybe we don't have a lead flow, we don't have a good marketing program, whatever that weakness is. We have to identify that. And if we can't identify that, I mean, how are we going to fix it, right? And then we have so I got to think about it. So we've got our opportunities. Well, what are those opportunities? Maybe there's um, a new product that we want to get into. Maybe it's a new service, and we're going to move into this. This is an opportunity that we have, new product, whatever it is. We want to take a look at that and come up with a plan how to go after that. And then we get into our threats, as we discussed. The economy changing, huge threat that we face. Another threat we face is the lack of qualified workers. And that comes from also, you have to realize that every day those guys are out there on jobs. Your competitors are going by offering them more money. They're trying to poach your guys. And if they're vulnerable to that, you're going to lose them. And then you're really up the creek, if you lose your existing guys, let alone get anybody else. So that's a whole plan of how do we retain. And we've got to consider that. But without thinking this through, what those threats are and how to take action, we've got a problem. So the next one, which I think is really what business is all about, I call it the operation. And business, and really any business, is like a three-legged stool. Okay. And those legs are, we have to sell work, we have to do work, and we have to keep score. And each of those three legs has to be solid and strong. And what happens so often is, let's say we've got a ton of sales, and this is kind of what's going on now, ton of sales, but we don't have the production to install it. That production leg is weak. We've got to strengthen that leg. How do we do it? Or the other problem is the keeping score, and this is where I see most contractors having trouble, is that bookkeeping, that accounting, the numbers end of the business, which is so important. We don't like the numbers, so I'm just gonna pass that off to somebody else, generally unqualified, generally going to get embezzled. That's why there's so much embezzlement in this industry, right? Is that they don't understand their numbers. They can't read financial statements. They don't really understand their costs. So they don't know what to charge. And in running your business, this stool has to be solid and strong in each of those three legs. And this is what I do in my coaching is talk about this. It's a holistic approach to running a business. You have to know all of these things. We've got guys we talked about, they come up either through the trades or through sales, but there are not many guys come up through the accounting, and they don't really understand the numbers. You have to learn those numbers, and it's not that complicated. So that's the operation, and keeping that solid, strong. If we're doing that, everything's humming along, business is going to be pretty good. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we always talk about the process, obviously coming from a CRM background, the process was a huge part. And you'd be amazed at how many guys that have been in business for 5, 10 years. And you say like, okay, walk me through your process, start to finish, so that we can start to build out your CRM. And they
Right.
can't do it. They
Yeah.
can't take that process from their mind and put it down on paper. Right. And then, you kind of, like you said, there's always that piece that's missing. Like, the three-legged stool is a great analogy, because there's your sales, your production, and your accounting piece. And it always seems like we struggle with one or the other, right? Like
Right.
something's gonna not is not all the way there. And I think a lot of that is because we have never identified that it's a weakness of ours. And so many of these guys that come up through the trades, production is their thing, right? Production's
Right.
their bread and butter. I could run a job site all day, right? But maybe I don't like to sell. Maybe I don't like the market. Maybe I don't want to keep track of the books, right? So we figure out a better, more effective way to handle that. But yeah, the process, I think, is the core. At the core of it is so important, and being able, you talked about that word, the buzzword scaling. All these guys, everybody wants to scale their business. Well, you can't
Right.
scale if you don't have a good process, right? If your process is
Yep.
messed up, you're going to fall flat in your face when you try to scale. So, it becomes that operational piece, and understanding it is so important to the success of the business long term.
Mm-hmm. And that's our next step, is we call it the process, okay, which is so
There you go.
important. And we can get into it, and I call it the 2 week vacation. Now, let's say you won a 2 week vacation to Maui. Problem is, you have to leave next week. Okay, most contractors couldn't go; their business would fall apart. And this is what I was talking about earlier: is that if you can't take 2 weeks off from your business and have it still run, you don't have a business. You've got a job. So what we need to do is build that out. And one of the goals that I set for our contractors: where are you going on that 2 week vacation? Here's our goal. We got to build out this business so you can do it. We got to make sure that everything's covered while you're away. And this is where we're talking about getting the right positions and the right people. And whether it's, we use the seats on the bus and the people, that whole deal from whatever EOS, that's what's so important. We have to build that out, and that takes a lot of planning. But you've got to be able to take time off from your business, and this is how you start to remove yourself from the day to day. Otherwise, you're going to be on that hamster wheel forever. And so, with that in mind, with the 2 week vacation, these are the steps that we need to take. This is who's going to be responsible for it. This is who's going to have it done by a certain date. And this is how we build it out. And that, which brings us to the next step, which is the action. And it's the one action. What's the one thing that we can do that would change our business, that would have the most effect? When we go through this, we can come up with, this long laundry list of all the things that we need to do, but it just gets overwhelming. So I believe we focus on the one thing. It's not the only thing, but it's the one thing that we should do right now. In our situation, it was building out our service department, and that was a huge goal, but it made all the difference in our business. I mean, that changed everything when it came to profitability, growth, and it's was really where it was at. That's what really made our business. So it's taking that action, because a plan without action, doesn't mean squat. You've
Yeah.
got to take action. You've got to implement. So, you see this all the time, right? Is that, hey, this is what I need to do. Yeah, when I get around to it, but they never take action. They never take the steps, the planned steps to get them there.
Yep.
And then our last step, which is kind of interesting, which we don't usually think about, and it's what I call the view. Now, we've worked our butt off all these years, blood, sweat, and tears, to get to the top of the mountain, whether that be retirement or sell our business or whatever it is. We finally make it. Well, how do we like the view? How do we like what we see? And I know so many contractors that get to that end, they sell their business, and this is very common when it comes to business planning, exiting, which I did. I've seen a lot of it, and they get to the end and they don't like what they see. What am I going to do? All I've done, I've worked in this business every day of my life. All my friends are in the business. I don't have any friends outside of the business. I don't have any hobbies. I never developed those. And here I am sitting at home with my spouse all the time, driving each other crazy. It's like, what is your plan? And that's something that we have to think about as we go. We got to have that balance. And we don't want to just focus in on the business 24/7. We want to build out a life, because at some point we're going to get to the end, and we want to make sure that we enjoy the view. So that's really how the plan works. It's as simple as that. We just take time and take a step back and really think those things through. Just like what some of the things that we discussed here, just to start. And that's that process where we're thinking this through. We're going, well, that's not going to work. That might be a problem. Or how about this? How about that? And we walk it through. And that's what a coach or a mentor, somebody can help. You bounce those ideas off each other. Peer groups are great for that. We have masterminds, and you're able to bounce ideas off and see what other people are doing, and it gets you thinking about all of the the process that we've talked about. So we can plan this out. And then now we've really got a roadmap of where we're going. We know our destination and we know how to get there. And here are the steps that we're going to take.
Yeah, I
That's
love
it.
that. I mean,
Voila.
I love it. Because I think that's the piece that's missed so many times is just take that step back and think about it, right? Like, just let's not just dive in here and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I got a good idea. Let's just, skip to step 7 and act, right?
Right.
You know,
Right.
we just missed the whole front end process. And now, eventually it's going to catch up with us, and I think that that's the piece that so often just gets overlooked is like, do the homework, do, like you
Yeah.
said, find someone else who's already been through it and utilize them to bounce these ideas off of and say, hey, this is where I want to get to. How did you
Mm-hmm.
get there? Right?
Right.
How did you get
Right.
to be able to sell your business and retire and do the things you want to do? Because that's ultimately my goal, right? So I think those are, it's great insight. And, I love that it's straightforward and a simple plan and it's easy to kind of roll through those steps. It's not super involved. I mean, obviously you could get more in depth when it comes to a business plan if you wanted to, but you don't have to here. You could really kind of lay out that business in a very straightforward manner. And it's a great 8 steps, that really captures everything that we really need to kind of just take a step back and look at the big picture and figure
Mm-hmm.
out what the end goal is here. So I really appreciate it, Dave. I really appreciate you jumping on with me, and it's great information. And I think, coming from a business background and having some insight and seeing these guys run businesses, and talking to
Yep.
so many contractors that, uh, you know, I, I love the insight. I think it's great. I think it's great knowledge and it's such an important piece that I think is so often overlooked in this business.
And we want to keep it simple. It's not that complicated. I think running a good business should be boring. We're doing the same thing over and over again.
Great.
If we're doing it right, and it really comes down to, just good blocking and tackling, the basics. And if we do those well, we do them every day and we're consistent in doing the small things, we're going to be successful. But it's not easy and it takes planning, it takes discipline, and it takes consistency.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everybody listening in. Be sure to check out Dave's website at theroofershow.com and also his podcast, The Roofr Show. And, we look forward to seeing you guys next time here on the Roofr Report every other Tuesday. Great insight into how to run the business and, as much information as we possibly can bring you guys about the roofing industry. So thanks again, Dave. Really appreciate you jumping on. And like I said, a lot of great information here for the roofer.
Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.